I get it when you're staring at a cheap, home store mat cutter that promises smooth cuts but ends up tugging the paper. You instantly feel the sting of buyer's remorse. I've been there, watching a cheap blade wander off track on a 4-ply mat and wasting both time and expensive art paper. So before you decide whether to splurge on a professional-grade machine or stick with the bargain bin, let's figure out if the Logan 860 Platinum Edge actually earns that extra dollars. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First, a little context about the mat cutting world. Mat cutters sit in a sweet spot between a simple rotary cutter and a full-blown CNC router. They're the workhorse that lets framers, photographers, and hobbyists trim paper to exact dimensions without hand-scoring every edge. The difference between a reliable cutter and a budget one shows up the moment you try to cut thicker, multiply mats. A flimsy machine will bind, produce uneven edges, or even damage the blade, forcing you to redo the whole piece. That's why professionals swear by models that can glide through 8-ply stock without a hiccup. The Logan 860 Platinum Edge lands in the top-tier category. It's advertised as Logan's heavy-duty cutter, built to handle both 4 and 8-ply mat boards. The first thing you notice when you set it up is the length. 60 inches of cutting rail gives you room to work on larger artworks without having to reposition constantly. In my studio, that extra reach means I can take a full-size gallery wrap and cut the mat in one fluid motion, rather than breaking it into sections and risking misalignment. What really makes the 860 feel premium is the micro-adjustable moving magnetic stop and mat guide. In practice, that translates to a guide that snaps into place at any point along the rail, then lets you fine-tune the position by fractions of a millimeter. I used it to create a custom 2-inch border for a series of 1114 prints. The magnetic stop held steady while I shifted the guide for each size, and the cuts were consistently spot on. No need to measure twice or worry about drift. For anyone who does batch work, that level of repeatability saves a surprising amount of time. Another practical strength is the blade change system. Logan's replacement blade model 267 slides into place with a quick-release lever. The old-school screw-in blades I've used on cheaper machines take a full minute or more to swap, and any wobble can ruin the next cut. With the 860, you pull the lever, drop the new blade in, and lock it with a click. In a busy studio, that's a genuine workflow boost, especially when you're moving between 4-ply and 8-ply projects and need to switch blades for optimal performance. Now, let's talk about the drawbacks that matter after the purchase. The most obvious is size and weight. The 60-inch rail, while generous, makes the unit a bit unwieldy for a small home office or a cramped craft room. You'll need a sturdy tabletop or a dedicated workbench, and moving it from room to room isn't a weekend project. Also, the machine doesn't come with a built-in dust collection system, so you'll have to manage paper shavings manually, something most pros do, but a casual user might find messy. Price is another factor. The Logan 860 sits comfortably in the professional price bracket, which is justified by the smooth cutting action and the magnetic guide, but it's still a noticeable investment for a hobbyist who only cuts a few mats a year. If you're the type who frames once a month or does occasional art projects, a smaller, less expensive cutter might meet your needs without the bulk. Who should buy the Logan 860? If you run a framing shop, a gallery, or a photography studio where you cut dozens of mats weekly, this cutter will pay for itself in speed and consistency. It's also a solid pick for serious hobbyists who treat framing as a craft. Think of someone who sells custom-framed prints on Etsy and needs to keep a professional look. The machine's ability to handle thick, multiply stock without binding means you can experiment with layered mats, a technique that adds depth and visual interest to prints. Who should skip it? If you're only framing a handful of family photos a year, or if you need a portable cutter to take to shows, you'll probably find the 860 overkill. In those cases, a compact rotary cutter with a simple guide can do the job, and you'll avoid the space and budget commitment. Also, if you're just starting out and unsure whether you'll stay in the framing game, it might be wiser to test the waters with a lower-priced model before stepping up to Logan's top tier. From a practical standpoint, the Logan 860 delivers what the name promises, a super smooth cut that feels almost like the blade is gliding on butter. When I cut an 8-ply mat for a museum-quality print, there was no chatter, no snagging, and the edge was crisp enough to skip the sanding step. That level of finish is where you